In 1962, the very first Kmart opened its doors in Garden City, Michigan, and somewhere past the registers sat a glass bakery case that outlived the whole company in people's memories. Everybody remembers the blue light special. Almost nobody remembers the smell of warm glazed dough that hit you the second the automatic doors slid open. Number 14 on this list sold out by noon every Saturday. Number 3 cost a quarter. These 25 treats fed a generation. Then Kmart vanished and took them with it. Hit subscribe. Let's count down the 25 forgotten Kmart bakery treats shoppers grabbed on the way out the door. Number 25, Kaiser rolls and dinner rolls. Before the fancy bakeries, before the artisan loaves with the $12 price tags, the Kmart bakery sold a brown paper sack of Kaiser rolls for pocket change. A dozen crusty rolls, still warm enough to fog the inside of the bag, for right around 89 cents. Your mom grabbed them on the way out because the sandwich bread at home was down to the heels, and these were fresher and cheaper than anything on the grocery aisle. Split one open, and the inside pulled apart in soft, feathery strings that soaked up butter like a sponge. The tops were dusted with poppy seeds or a little cornmeal that stuck to your fingers. For Sunday dinner, a basket of these sat in the middle of the table wrapped in a dish towel to hold the heat. Nobody photographed them. Nobody bragged about them. They were just there, warm and cheap and exactly enough, the quiet backbone of 100 ordinary suppers. Number 24, blueberry muffins. The Kmart bakery muffins came 4 to a plastic clamshell, domed tops cracked and sugar-crusted, spilling over the edges of the paper like they had risen too fast, and nobody minded. Blueberry was the one everybody reached for first, streaked purple where the berries had bled into the batter. They cost about $1 for the pack of 4, cheaper than the box mix you would have baked at home and without heating up the kitchen. Your mom bought them on Friday, so there was something for breakfast before school, and by Sunday the last one had gone slightly stale, which was exactly when it was best, split and toasted with butter melting into the crumb. The tops were the prize. Everybody in the family had an unspoken agreement that you did not eat somebody else's muffin top. These were not gourmet. They were a little greasy, a little too sweet, and they tasted like a Saturday morning cartoon marathon in a way no bakery muffin does today. Number 23, thumbprint jam cookies. Tucked in the assorted cookie tray behind the chocolate chip and the sugar cookies sat the little butter cookies with a thumb press well in the center filled with a jewel of red or purple. Jam, raspberry, strawberry, sometimes apricot, that had gone almost amber in the oven. They were rolled in chopped nuts or fine sugar around the edge, and the jam had baked down into a chewy, sticky center that stuck to your back teeth. A pound of mixed cookies ran a couple of dollars, and the thumbprints were the ones the grandmothers picked out one by one. They looked fancier than they were, which is exactly why they showed up on the good plate when company came over. There was something almost delicate about them in a store built on blue light bargains and rolling clothing racks. A cookie with a little jewel in the middle, sold by the pound, right next to the automotive department. Only Kmart could make that feel completely normal. Number 22, crumb coffee cake. This was the one your mom grabbed when relatives were coming over and there was no time to bake. A square aluminum pan of yellow cake buried under a full inch of cinnamon crumb topping. The crumbs the size of gravel, dusted so heavy with powdered sugar it snowed onto the counter when you cut it. It cost $2 or $3, and it fed a whole kitchen full of people standing around drinking coffee out of mismatched mugs. The trick was that the bottom stayed moist and tender, while the top crumbled into buttery cinnamon-sweet rubble that you picked off with your fingers when you thought nobody was looking. By the time it reached the last person, half the crumb was gone, and there was an unspoken argument about who did it. Served with a cup of Folgers on a Sunday morning, it was the taste of adults talking too long at the table while the kids waited to be excused. Number 21. Jelly-filled Bismarcks. Before the filled donut became a gas station afterthought, the Kmart bakery made a proper Bismarck, round and puffy with no hole, its top shattered with powdered sugar and a hidden pocket of grape or raspberry jelly waiting inside. You never knew exactly where the filling was, so the first bite was a gamble, and when you hit the jelly, it oozed out the side and down your wrist. They cost about $0.25 apiece, maybe $3 for $1 in the box. The powdered sugar got on everything, your shirt, your chin, the steering wheel, because these got eaten in the car in the parking lot before you even got home. That was the whole point of a bakery near the exit. Your mom said one treat each, and the Bismarck was the strategic pick because it lasted longer than a donut. You ate it slow, saving the jelly bite for last, watching the store shrink in the rearview mirror. Number 20. French bread loaves. Long, golden, torpedo-shaped loaves stood upright in a wire rack by the bakery counter, still warm, the crust crackling as it cooled so you could actually hear it if you leaned in close. A loaf cost around 79 cents, and it was gone before dinner. Your mom bought it for spaghetti night, and the whole ride home the car smelled like a bread oven. You were not supposed to touch it, but everybody tore off the heel, that crunchy end nub, and ate it plain in the back seat. Sliced open, buttered thick, sprinkled with garlic salt, and run under the broiler, it became garlic bread that put the frozen kind to shame. The inside was soft and full of holes that trapped butter. It went stale within a day, which is why it never lasted a day. This was cheap bread, factory bread, made in the back of a discount store, and somehow it beat almost everything. First, pattern break. Here is where the memory stops being about food. If you were a kid in the 70s, the 80s, even the early 90s, the Kmart run was an event. The automatic doors slid open and a wall of warm air hit you, popcorn and pretzels and that unmistakable sweet cloud of frying dough drifting all the way from the bakery in the back. That smell was engineered. Stores knew exactly what a warm bakery does to a person walking and tired and hungry after work. Your feet slowed down. Your kids started pointing at the glass case. Suddenly, the $12 shopping trip had a $2 tax on it that nobody in the family regretted. The bakery was not just a counter. It was a reward at the finish line of a boring errand, a small bribe that turned a chore into a treat. And every single person reading this can still smell it if they close their eyes. Number 19. Elephant ears. Flat, crispy, palm-sized sheets of pastry folded over on themselves a dozen times and pressed thin, then dipped in cinnamon sugar until they crackled. Some people knew them as palm ears, but at Kmart they were elephant ears, and they were enormous, sometimes bigger than the paper plate they came on. They cost 50 cents to $1 depending on the year, and they shattered into 1,000 buttery flakes the second you bit down, coating your lap and the floorboard of the station wagon in sugary shrapnel. There was no clean way to eat one. The layers pulled apart like the pages of a book, each one thin and glassy and caramelized at the edges. Kids loved them because they were huge and cheap and felt like getting away with something. Your mom loved them because one could be split 3 ways and keep the whole back seat quiet from the store to the driveway. Nobody makes them this big anymore. Nobody dares. Number 18. Angel food cake. Tall, pale, and airy, The angel food cake sat under a plastic dome looking like a cloud somebody had baked. It cost a couple of dollars and it weighed almost nothing, which felt like a scam until you tasted it. Your mom bought it in the summer, hollowed out the center, and filled it with sliced strawberries and Cool Whip for a dessert that felt fancy and cost next to nothing. Torn apart with your fingers, it came away in fluffy white tufts, spongy and springy, sweet without being heavy. It was the birthday cake for the aunt who was watching her weight, the one who said she really shouldn't and then had 2 slices. Because there was no butter and no yolks, everybody told themselves it was practically health food, which was a beautiful lie the whole family agreed to believe. It was the lightest thing in a store full of heavy bargains. Number 17, old-fashioned cake donuts. Not the light, airy raised donut, the dense, craggy sour cream cake donut with the cracked, crispy edges that got extra crunchy when it was dunked. These were the coffee donuts, the ones the dads and grandpas reached for, plain or dusted with powdered sugar, built for dipping and not for frosting, $1 a piece, or a box of a dozen for a couple of bucks. The whole magic was in the crust. That thin, fried shell around the outside went soft in hot coffee but held together just long enough for one more bite. Break one in half, and the inside was tight and cakey, almost like pound cake that had been dropped in a fryer. Your grandpa ate one every Saturday morning, standing at the kitchen counter, reading the newspaper, coffee going cold. It was not exciting. It was not covered in sprinkles. It was the donut for people who had outgrown excitement and just wanted something honest to go with their coffee. Number 16, cherry cheese Danish. This was the treat that felt like a hotel breakfast to a family that never stayed in hotels. A pinwheel of flaky pastry with a swirl of sweet cream cheese in the center. A spoonful of glossy cherry pie filling on top, and a thin drizzle of white icing zigzagged across the whole thing. They came 4 to a box for a couple of dollars, and they went fast. The pastry was buttery and layered, shattering into flakes, and the cheese center was tangy and rich against the almost too sweet cherry. Your mom warmed them 10 seconds in the microwave, and the icing went soft and glassy. There was always a fight over who got the cherry one versus the cheese one. These showed up on Christmas morning and Easter, and any day important enough to justify not making eggs. They looked like something you were not supposed to be able to afford, sold in a store where you could also buy a garden hose. Number 15, pumpkin pie. Every fall, the Kmart bakery stacked pumpkin pies by the dozen, cellophane wrapped, still cheaper than the ingredients would have cost you to make one from scratch. Around $3 a piece, and in November your mom bought 2, one for Thanksgiving and one that got eaten straight out of the fridge the week before by everybody who swore they only had a sliver. The filling was dark and dense and heavily spiced, that unmistakable cinnamon, nutmeg, clove smell that means the holidays no matter what else is going on. The crust was nothing special, a little pale and soft, but nobody bought a Kmart pie for the crust. Cold, right out of the refrigerator at 11 at night with a spoon and no plate, standing in the light of the open fridge door, that was how the second pie always went. Grandma would ask if you made it yourself, and everybody at the table would suddenly get very interested in their napkins. Nobody confessed. The pie was good enough that it did not matter. Number 14, cinnamon rolls. Here is the one that sold out by noon every single Saturday. Fist-sized, soft, coiled tight, glued together in the pan so you had to pull them apart, each one leaving a strand of gooey cinnamon on the next. They came slathered in white icing that pooled in the crevices and dripped down the sides, and they were still warm when the bakery put them out first thing in the morning. That was the secret. You had to get there early. By afternoon, the tray was empty, and the sign just said, "Sold out." And the people who came at 2 in the afternoon learned to come at 9. A 4-pack ran $2 or $3. The middle of the roll, that soft, underbaked spiral of dough soaked in cinnamon and butter, was the whole reason to exist, and everybody unrolled theirs to save the center for last. The smell alone sold hundreds of them. That is not an exaggeration. That is a marketing strategy that worked on your entire family for 30 years. Second pattern break. Here is something Kmart never said out loud. The bakery was not really there to make money on bread. It was bait. A discount store lives and dies on foot traffic, on getting a body through the door, and keeping it inside long enough to buy a lamp it did not come for. Warm bread and cheap donuts did that better than any coupon. The math was simple and a little bit ruthless. Sell a donut for $0.25 at almost no profit, and in exchange the customer wanders the store for another 20 minutes with a sweet taste in their mouth and their guard down. The bakery paid for itself 100 times over in impulse buys 3 aisles away. But here is the thing nobody at corporate expected. For millions of families, that cynical little loss leader became the actual memory. Not the lamp, not the socks, the donut. They engineered a bribe and accidentally built a childhood. Number 13. Fudge brownies. Thick, dark, and dense enough to feel illegal, the Kmart bakery brownies were cut into generous squares and sold from the tray, some plain, some with a slab of fudge frosting on top that was almost as thick as the brownie itself. $1 or so got you a square the size of a deck of cards. The corners were the fought-over pieces, chewy on 2 edges, and if you got there first, you learned to snatch a corner and run. The centers were softer, almost underbaked in the middle, which is exactly how a brownie should be. These were heavy, fudgy bricks of chocolate that sat in your stomach the rest of the afternoon and were worth every minute of it. Your mom bought a half dozen for a school bake sale and quietly kept 2 back for herself in a napkin in her purse. Everybody knew, nobody said anything, that was the deal. Number 12, cream puffs. These were the treat that felt impossibly fancy for the price. A hollow shell of choux pastry, light and eggy, split open and piled with sweet whipped cream filling, the whole top hidden under a heavy snowfall of powdered sugar. They were huge, way bigger than the little cream puffs at a real bakery, and they cost around $1. You could not eat one without wearing it. The cream squirted out the sides, and the powdered sugar went straight up your nose if you breathed in at the wrong moment, and everybody sneezed and laughed. Your mom bought them when something good had happened. A raise, a good report card, the last day of school. They were the celebration pastry for a family that celebrated small. Delicate, ridiculous, impossible to eat with dignity, and gone in about 4 bites. Nobody expected real French pastry in a store with a layaway counter, and yet, there they were. Number 11, apple turnovers. A triangle of flaky pastry sealed around a pocket of cinnamon apple filling, the edges crimped with a fork, the top slashed to let the steam out, and drizzled with white icing that cracked when you bit in. They came a few to a box for a couple of dollars, and they were dangerous straight from the bakery because the filling stayed molten hot inside long after the outside had cooled. Everybody in the history of turnovers has burned the roof of their mouth on that first eager bite. The apples inside were soft and spiced, a little tart, and the pastry flaked apart in golden shards all down your front. Cold from the fridge the next day, they were arguably better. the icing set hard, and the filling thick like jam. Warm one up, and for a minute the kitchen smelled like an apple pie nobody had to bake. Number 10. Cupcakes. Long before the boutique cupcake shops charged $4 for one, the Kmart bakery sold them by the half dozen, chocolate or yellow cake buried under a swirl of frosting so tall and so sweet it was basically a hat. The frosting was that specific bakery buttercream, more shortening than butter, that crusted slightly on the outside and stayed soft underneath, in colors that do not occur in nature. Bright blue, neon pink, a green that meant it was almost St. Patrick's Day. A pack cost $1 or $2. These were the emergency birthday treat, the ones your mom grabbed on the way home when she remembered at the last second it was your turn to bring something to the class party. Every kid peeled the frosting off first and ate it alone, then dealt with the cake afterward like it was a chore. The paper liner always kept a little cake glued to it, and you scraped that off with your teeth. Sophistication was not the point. Sugar was. Number 9. Bear claws. Big as your hand, glazed and glistening, with the signature slits fanned out along one edge, so it really did look like a paw. Inside was a ribbon of almond paste, sweet and dense, and the top was studded with sliced almonds that toasted golden in the oven and fell off in a little pile you ate separately at the end. A bear claw ran 50 cents to $1, and it was a two-hands, lean-over-the-plate kind of pastry. The glaze cracked and flaked. The dough pulled apart in long, buttery layers. This was the grown-up pastry, the one your dad picked when everybody else went for the frosted stuff, the one that came with black coffee and a newspaper. Kids thought they were boring right up until the year they suddenly weren't, and then a bear claw became the sign you had crossed over into caring about pastry that was not covered in sprinkles. Nobody sells them this size anymore. They have all shrunk. Number 8. Pound cake. A dense golden loaf with a cracked seam running down the top, sold plain in a plastic sleeve for a couple of dollars, and it did the work of a dozen desserts. Your mom sliced it thick, and depending on the season it got strawberries and whipped cream, or a scoop of ice cream, or a run under the broiler until the edges toasted, or nothing at all because it was perfect. Nothing at all. The crumb was tight and buttery and a little chewy at the crust. It kept for a week on the counter, getting slightly denser each day, which somehow only made it better. This was the utility infielder of the bakery case, the cake that showed up to church potlucks and funerals and Tuesday afternoons with equal ease. A good pound cake is a promise, and the Kmart one, humble as it was, kept it. Toasted with butter, it was the quiet reward at the end of a long, unremarkable day. Third, pattern break. Here is the part that stings. At its peak, Kmart had more than 2,000 stores and was one of the biggest retailers in America. There was one in every town, and every one of them had that bakery case near the front, filling the whole store with the smell of sugar and warm dough. And then it all came apart. The bankruptcies, the closings, the slow bleed of stores one by one until the number dropped from 2,000 to a few hundred to a handful you could count on your fingers. When a Kmart closed, the town did not just lose a place to buy tube socks. It lost the bakery. It lost the smell. It lost the Saturday ritual and the quarter donut and the parking lot Bismarck and the birthday cake counter. A whole way of moving through an ordinary week disappeared, and most people did not even notice until it was already gone. You cannot go back and smell it again. That door is closed. Number 7, Long John's. The long rectangular donut split down the middle and filled with cream or custard topped with a slick of chocolate or maple frosting. These were the heavyweight champion of the donut case, twice the size of a regular donut, built for someone who was serious about it. A quarter or two apiece. The maple ones had that specific artificial maple flavor that tastes like nothing in nature and everything like childhood. The cream-filled ones oozed when you bit down, and you learned to bite from the end and work inward or risk losing the whole payload onto your shirt. Kids picked these when one donut was not enough and two felt like pushing your luck, so you split the difference with a donut the size of two. Your dad called them by the wrong name half the time, and nobody corrected him. They were too big, too sweet, and too much, which is exactly why they were the best thing in the box. Number 6. Apple fritters. Craggy, glazed, gloriously ugly lumps of fried dough shot through with chunks of cinnamon apple, the whole thing dipped in a thin glaze that hardened into a sweet shell. No two were the same shape. Some were the size of a hamburger, all the crevices and folds catching extra glaze and getting extra crispy. Around 50 cents to $1, and it was the single most substantial thing in the donut case, dense and chewy in the middle where the dough had not fully cooked through, which was the best part. You could smell the cinnamon before you saw it. Break one open, and there were pockets of soft apple hiding inside like a treasure hunt. This was the fritter for people who understood that ugly food is often the best food, that the lumpy, overglazed one is always tastier than the pretty one. Your grandpa knew this. He always reached past the neat rows of glazed donuts and grabbed the ugliest fritter in the case. Number 5. Eclairs. A long finger of choux pastry, split and filled with cool vanilla custard, the whole top dipped in a thick, shiny chocolate glaze that stayed slightly soft. This was the treat that felt genuinely fancy, the one that made a kid feel grown up and a little sophisticated eating it pinky out in the car. They cost around $1, and the trick was in the contrast, the crisp shell, the cold custard, the snap of the chocolate on top. You bit through all three at once, and it was 3 desserts in one bite. Left out too long, the shell went soft and the whole thing slumped, which is why you ate it fast. Your mom bought eclairs when she wanted the treat to feel like a real occasion, when a plain donut would not do. In a store famous for saving you money, the eclair was the one small splurge that made you feel, for $1, like you had bought something luxurious. Number 4. The big, soft chocolate chip cookies. Not the crunchy bagged kind. The enormous, soft, bendable bakery cookie the size of a saucer, studded with chocolate chips, still slightly warm if you timed it right so the chips were half melted. They sold them individually wrapped or a dozen to a box, around 50 cents each. The edges were just barely crisp, and the whole middle was soft enough to fold in half without breaking. That was the test of a real bakery cookie. If it snapped, it was a store cookie. If it folded, it was the good one. Kids begged for these at the checkout, and a warm one did not survive the walk to the car. Your mom broke off a piece to keep you quiet and ended up eating half of it herself. Dunked in cold milk, it was as close to perfect as a 50-cent cookie gets. Everybody has spent the years since chasing the memory of a soft bakery chocolate chip cookie, and most of them fall short. Number 3. The plain glazed donut. Here is the quarter treat. The simplest thing in the whole case, and for a lot of people, still the best. A raised ring of dough, light and airy, dipped in a thin to sugar glaze that set into a delicate, crackling shell you could hear when you bit down. It cost $0.25, sometimes less, and a box of a dozen went for a couple of dollars, which meant even on the tightest week your mom could afford to make the trip end well. Fresh, still slightly warm from the morning batch, a glazed donut is one of the great cheap pleasures of American life. The glaze went a little melty and stuck to your fingers. The inside pulled apart in soft, feathery strands. It did not need filling or frosting or sprinkles or a fancy name. It was perfect exactly as it was, and it cost $0.25, and it made an ordinary Saturday feel like a small holiday. Number 2. The big, soft, frosted sugar cookie. Pale, thick, cake soft, and topped with a half-inch slab of that unnaturally colored frosting and a shower of rainbow nonpareils, this was the cookie that ruled the case. Pink for no reason, blue for no reason. Whatever color they had frosting for that day. Around 50 cents each. The cookie itself barely tasted like anything. Soft and vanilla and almost bland, which was the point, because it was just a delivery system for that thick, sweet, slightly crusty frosting. Every kid ate the frosting off first, scraping it with their front teeth, and then reluctantly ate the naked cookie underneath out of obligation. The sprinkles got everywhere, in the car, in the couch, in the carpet, showing up for weeks like glitter. These were the birthday party cookie, the class treat cookie, the reward for being good at the store cookie. Soft enough to fold, sweet enough to hurt your teeth, and beloved out of all proportion to how good they actually were. That is nostalgia. That is exactly what it feels like. Number 1. The birthday sheet cake. At the top of this list is the treat that marked every childhood milestone for a generation of American families. You walked up to the bakery counter, flipped through the laminated binder of designs, and picked one, the balloons, the race car, the flowers, whatever matched the kid. The lady behind the counter wrote the name in looping icing with a paper cone, "Happy Birthday," and then your name. And it felt like the most important thing in the world to see your own name spelled out in blue gel on a white cake. A quarter sheet fed the whole party for around $10, half of what a fancy bakery charged. The cake was yellow, the frosting was that sweet, crusting buttercream, and the roses on the corners were pure sugar and pure joy. Every kid fought for a corner piece with a flower. Here's the thing. That cake was cheap, mass-produced, and made in the back of a discount store between the deli and the pharmacy. And it was also the centerpiece of the single best day of a kid's whole year. Your mom could not afford much, but she could afford this, and she made sure the name was spelled right and the candles were lit and the whole room sang. That cake was not really about cake. It was proof that on your day, in a family stretching every dollar, somebody made sure you got something special. Kmart is mostly gone now, but if you grew up with one of those cakes, you have never forgotten the day your name was on it. Here's the challenge. This week, go buy one of these somewhere, anywhere. The glazed donut, the soft frosted sugar cookie, the cinnamon roll you have to get before noon. Eat it slow and see if it takes you back. Then tell me in the comments which Kmart treat you would drive across town for right now if you could. I want to know if the birthday sheet cake gets more love than the elephant ears. Because these were never just snacks grabbed on the way out the door. They were the taste of an ordinary American Saturday we did not know we would miss until it was gone.